Welcome back to RaceSpotTV, and it is here for Friday night prime time. We've had 3 weeks now of this new format where you vote for what we are going to be seeing on track. We've had touring cars, we've had four-wheel drive jumpy trucks, and now this week we're going GT racing, a little bit more common amongst the iRacing standard of driving, and I'm sure it's going to be a great action as we hit the GT Sprint Series this evening. Myself, Cameron Roger, and Zach Sweeney taking you through the action with Zach Johnson on the cameras behind the scenes. It is RaceSpot Friday night prime time, and yes, this new format, Zach, has certainly been a very nice welcome change from what we had last season.
Absolutely. I mean, we say it week in, week out. We don't, we miss the IRO4 series, really do, because week in, week out, it gave us some great action. But this season, we just have such a variety. We go into each race, not really too sure on what's going on. Of course, this vote for this week was completely anonymous, so we didn't actually find out where we were going until last night. So, it keeps you on your toes. You're left in suspense for a while, and then, of course, it gets sprung on you what's actually going to be broadcast. And we, obviously, in the commentary booth, we have to be prepared, and we always look forward to a bit of GT action. It's sort of the basic, but it's a safe place to return to for sure.
Certainly is a very popular series indeed, and here is the voting. So it's actually very close between some Xfinity racing around Talladega, just 6% between the two, and of course there's other options as well. And if you want to get yourself involved, go onto the RaceSpotTV Discord, get yourself on there, look for the Primetime voting. It should be the second channel from the top, and there we will have the voting, and on screen you can see what we've got to vote for next week. We've got some GT4, some Skip Barbers, some more NASCAR Cup Series as well, or some 4 off-roads as well. So lots of different options, different categories of racing, and Zach, this is what we like to see, something just a little bit different each week.
Exactly. It's it can tailor to everyone's needs. Already with this season we've had the touring cars and the off-road jump trucks as well, and now we go to GTs. We've had 3 completely different disciplines of racing, and then I'm sure next week as well we're going to go to something completely different as well. So it is just as I said, traveling to each of these different disciplines, giving them their own sort of highlighted spot in the limelight, and it is just great to see how each and every one of these disciplines and series on iRacing can tailor this themselves and bring action all in their own little special ways as well.
Yeah, they certainly can. Of course, we haven't quite mentioned yet Road Atlanta as well. What a track to come racing on. It's obviously we've got Petit Le Mans coming up. It's going to be an amazing sort of weekend of events, and it's going to be something very, very interesting. This track always provides some fast racing. It's always some very close racing as well. Gets very tense through the S's section, and of course the long back straight as well through turn 8 and 9 down to 10A, 10B, the very famous chicane as well, where all sorts of action and dive bombs can happen. So yeah, certainly looking like it's going to be set up for a nice evening of racing. 40 minutes of racing coming your way after the conclusion of this qualifying session.
A lot of action. The longest prime time I've certainly had over the course of, I think this is now my 3rd season on prime time, so it's going to be a long one relative to what we're used to here at prime time. But with a track like this, with a field like this as well, it's a big grid and cars like the GTs that can follow so well and race really well. It should be an absolute cracker. 40 minutes of just intense action. We have sort of as Road Atlanta historically, in sim racing, things like that, it's had its fair share of drama and chaos and things like that, because on paper it's like, there's not really much braking zones that you're actually on the brakes for very long, but because of the fast and flowing nature of the circuit cam, everyone can stay so close together, and because of that it just leads to absolute drama and chaos.
It certainly does, and not only that, but really tight, close qualifying sessions. As you can see, literally thousandths of a second between some of these drivers, and it's certainly one of those where literally the blink of an eye, especially coming out of maybe that final chicane there, you just get a little bit twitchy, you lose that momentum coming over the hill down through the final corner, and there you just lose the odd bit of time here and there. And we're just 8 minutes and a half. We got Steinbraten there leading the way from Jesse Jones and Godino, the top 3 as it stands, but of course with such close gaps that could all change on the final laps.
Oh, for sure. And Extreme is, decently powerful in these GT cars as well. It should, lend itself to be really, really close. Interestingly enough, though, the top 4 are all made up of Mercedes. So even though we've got quite a wide range of GT3 cars on iRacing, it seems that that Mercedes GT3 does seem to be the dominant force. I'm not sure what it is. Of course, the bot does do its job as well as it can. But yeah, interesting to note that the Mercedes does take quite a dominant stance in even, sprint series like this.
Certainly does, as Kuto there goes up into that 8th place. And you are right, there's potentially a bit of a bias towards the Mercedes from the drivers, but of course there's the BOP is obviously there for multiple tracks on the calendar. When you come to a certain track and a certain bigger race like this, where you're getting maybe Road Atlanta, where drivers want to perform, you're going to choose the best car, even if it is just thousandth of a second maybe between some of the cars. But of course, we'll see how that translates over the course of the 40-minute race. What car maybe keeps its tyres a little bit better? What's better in a straight line? What maybe has a bit more comfort through the S's? We'll certainly find that one out. Qualifying is not the be-all and end-all when it comes to a race like this. And of course, GT3 action as well, a very well-known category. This is probably the most used category among the whole of sim racing. Every single platform has these cars, and of course iRacing has a huge long list of the different GT3 models, all different variants from the Evo specs that we're getting in now as the GT3s sort of work their way through over the course of the years and improve. And then obviously, when they come to a track like this, everyone knows what is going on. Here is your grid for day. As we said, Steinbratton on that front row alongside Jesse Jones with Godino and Svalson there back in that 4th place. Katila and Heinrich there rounding out your top 6. And of course, plenty of good drivers on the grid today. Lorenz and Kuto there rounding out the top A before Rujo and Nascimento there rounding out the top 10. Lang and Reiber there rounding out the top 12. And we do have a 28 car field today, as we've got Villeneuve and Pangia there in 14th place. Stephen Michaels in 15th place. Tricolo in 16th. Christensen and Matthew Crisp rounding out the top 18. And then rounding out the top 20, we have Costa and Stolzer there in the 20th place before Tran and Grigorian in P22. Ridden 23 and Vern in 24th place. And for your final page, we have got Barlow, Double, Nesov, and there we have Sebastian in P28. But so look at actually Alexei Nesov there, obviously one of the more top drivers here on iRacing, but he's starting a lot further down than he would potentially want, but maybe just trying to spice it up there in the number 8 as the drivers all lining up on the grid. And Zach, it's certainly going to be a close race, but how much action do you think we're going to see?
With the qualifying as close as we had, with a grid as large as we've got, I don't think we're going to have any shortage of action at all. Fingers crossed anyway. I mean, it's easy to say that and then it'd be a really boring race. But, Primetime never disappoints at all. We've got 20 seconds until they get waved around for the formation lap just to get their tyres and brakes up to temperature. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one because even though it might be Merc dominated towards the front, they've got no excuses. They're all in the same car, so it's down to the driver.
Yeah, they certainly do. 25 is your incident limit for this race as well. And that's certainly something you can come a cropper to around here. In a 40-minute race, that's quite a few of the 4X contacts you can potentially have. And also the cuts can be, especially in turn 5, coming out of the S's, that left-hander up the hill, that can always be a place to run wide and get those cuts as well. So certainly something that drivers will need to work out for as we enter this formation lap behind the safety car, where they're, as you said, they'll be able to just get a little bit extra of a feel for the car before we come around to start the race.
This is where the adrenaline is going to be pumping to the absolute max. They're now getting ready to go racing, especially those amongst the mid-pack, because especially in a field as big as this, you either want to be right at the front or right at the back, because as soon as you're in that mid-pack, you've got so much going on. You're trying to carve your way through the field, trying to pick off some places while they're still fresh and everyone's still bunched up. But also, you're trying not to get caught up in any accidents. You're also trying not to get overtaken from behind. That mid-pack is for sure going to be absolute carnage.
Yeah, it's going to be a very nice race indeed. As you say, it's that top 4 in the Mercedes-AMG GT3, but we also have a couple of M4s behind them. We've got a couple of Porsches a bit further down. Ferrari in the face of Villeneuve there in 13th place. So quite a few different options up and down the field. And just how do you think those cars are going to sort of differentiate as we go through the race?
We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, of course the drivers are going to exploit their strengths and weaknesses. We are getting word in the YouTube chat from Stefan that the Porsche is the best car overall, so whether that is the case in this sprint format, I mean, it is only 40 minutes, but still, relative to a sprint, that's still, 40 minutes, that's still quite a few laps. You still need a car that's going to be comfortable. It's not a case of just going in the quickest one and trying to handle it, because even though it's 40 minutes, especially in a 40-minute race, it's so short. If you do have a spin, you know, if you've got a car that's not too comfortable, it's going to be so difficult to actually make that time up in the short space of time that you already have. So you really can't afford to be taking any losses at all. So even though speed is important in these sprints, it's also good to have that comfortability. So yeah, car choice is always going to be important. And of course, this is the open setup version of the VRS Sprint Series as well. So again, tailoring the setup to your own personal needs is also going to play a massive factor in that as well.
It certainly will. And as you see there, fairly warm out there on the track, partly cloudy as well. That's obviously something for the drivers to think about as we go over the course of the 40-minute race. The conditions will certainly change how the drivers affect the way they drive the car, how the tyres work as we come through this final corner through the kink. And let's see when they decide to go. And it looks like it's an early run. That's going to be already side by side between some of the drivers coming through this final kink. And hopefully no one is going to be having any sorts of spins as we come to start this third week of the RaceSpot Friday Night Prime Time here at Road Atlanta for the GT Sprint Series. It looks like everyone's getting through fairly nicely, and that's certainly why an early start is good, but we're still getting side-by-side battles a bit further there in the mid-pack. That's all about 8th position as well, and trying to go a bit side-by-side. As we come through the S's, at least the front pack staying pretty clean.
Single file pretty much for the entirety of like 12. They are all, you can just see everyone staying single file, trying to keep it nice and tidy through the S's, at least for the first lap. Keep it nice and sensible because, again, as I say, 40-minute race, you've got a little bit of time to get these moves done. A couple of cars ducking and diving, trying to cover off and make some moves up side by side towards the back end. As we said, that mid-pack is going to be absolute carnage, but so far so good for Steinbratton, who leads the way. He perfected that start, but now, Cam, off the exit of that right-hander, you've now got a long section that's completely flat out, and now this could be where Jesse Jones gets that run.
Yeah, it might do, absolutely. As we come towards this very important braking zone, as you say, it's probably, you know, the biggest braking zone on the track, and of course coming down the hill as well, it just promotes you to get a bit of a run on someone. But as it stands, it is going to be Steinbratton getting that run out of the final corner. Jesse Jones following in second place, and Godino in third place there as we come to empty this first lap. But look at this, side by side, 3 abreast as we come over the crest as well. Loads of action, one car on its roof in fact as well. There's obviously been a big collision there coming out of the exit of 10B. We're still side by side, multiple rows deep coming in towards turn number 1. The GT Sprint Series certainly having loads of action so far. So come on the hill once again towards turn number 3. Drivers trying to work their way. We've got Crisp here working his way up through the field, at least trying to, but it's so difficult to make these positions, but it's crucial early on in the races. The gaps are still so close between each other.
Indeed, it's the prime time in the race to get these moves done. You know, early on everyone's nice and bunched up. Side by side now we have the BMW looking to the right hander. Oh my word, that was so close between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. Now going through this next right hander. Has he been able to make this one stick now through T7 and then down that long back run completely flat out towards the chicane of 10A and 10B? But can the Ferrari get the run? But again, they're in such a close pack that everyone's getting the benefit of the slipstream. So relative to each other, it all just sort of cancels itself out. But we'll have to wait and see. As we said, it's sort of really calm towards the front end, but everyone nice and bunched up amongst this midfield. Any moves going in, or are they all going to stay single file? In the background, a shot there, you saw a bit of side by side, the BMW pulling to the left-hand side and trying to work their way through, but certainly no shortage of action in the early stages, Cam.
Certainly has, and that's what we wanted to see around this amazing Road Atlanta circuit. And of course, you want to see the drivers staying as close as they can, getting hopefully a bit of a replay to see what we can work out from the bit of the action that happened a bit earlier on, potentially coming out of 10B. There was certainly a lot of carnages on the Porsches there in the background. Are they going to have a bit of a spin actually on the exit nose? Oh wow, massive contact already. Cars going wide, huge hit there coming on the exit of 10B. There was certainly loads of things happening there at once. Got the green BMW just had these guys going a bit wide, then the Porsche getting contact from that blue Mercedes, well, sending them into the air. That's a hard hit straight into the wall.
He was really just a passenger as well, which is the bad thing about that. He tried his best to avoid in the Porsche, and unfortunately they just sort of got caught up in an instant. Wrong place, wrong time, got tapped slightly, and then was a passenger on the way to the barrier. This is the fight now back towards the front. It is still Steinbratton that is followed closely by Jesse Jones and Godino 1, 2, and 3. But, you know, surprisingly, they're being kept really close, Cam. But unfortunately, they're close, but not quite close enough. It seems, at least in this early portion of the race, everyone's being quite conservative, or they just can't close that gap enough to actually fabricate a move. And at the moment, it is just a stalemate towards the top end.
That is true, though. Something that obviously we're aware of is the fact that there's the refueling situation. There has to be a bit of a splash and dash, and therefore, if you can save maybe an extra lap, then you have less fuel to take on, less time stopped in the pit lane. And when you're in such close battle, that extra couple of seconds here and there could be all crucial. So that is certainly something to look out for. And of course, when you're at the front, you got loads of drivers in the same chassis, obviously at the same level of fuel, the same sort of tyre wear at this moment in time. Everyone's going to be on fairly equal pace, and therefore these top guys, they just want to pull away from the midfield and make sure they can make this battle amongst themselves as we get into the mid part of the race.
For sure, yeah, it's going to be so much easier to win a race if there's less cars involved. So I think maybe at the moment you're right in saying they've got that sort of mutual agreement amongst themselves to just say, let's chill out a little bit. We can save the fight for later on. We only want it amongst ourselves. We don't want any extra hassle in this train of cars. But yeah, it is going to come down to the finest margins, because at the moment, you know, pulling in a lap earlier or a lap later, getting that clear air could be the difference to running clear air, to run at your own pace, and then relatively speaking, get that time back up in the pit lane. You know, even though it's only a 40-minute race, even though you're only coming to the pit lane for a splash and dash, there is still such a huge strategy element to it, because you know, you get it slightly wrong and it could have a catastrophic consequence. Even if you only get it slightly right, even if you get it completely right, you're only going to get a small gain potentially as well. So yeah, it's certainly going to be a compromise and a balancing game of two when you come in, how you judge it. But yeah, 40 minutes with a pit stop, you wouldn't think of it as much, but there's certainly a lot going on out there on track.
Yeah, of course, it's called the Sprint Series, as there's obviously the Endurance Series that goes along with this. But as you say, 40 minutes, there's still a lot of strategy. Oh, wow, that is a car massively off into the barrier there. That was through the S's section as well. I would assume there's been a bit of contact with another driver there, because that is not a normal place that you would see. But here we got the Mercedes coming down through, yeah, just a little bit too much curb potentially there, and that's a massive hit into the wall. And no surprisingly, that car is out of the race.
Just a little bit. Yeah, that was a massive whack, and already we've seen two cars have pretty substantial hits to the barrier. It is a shame to lose them so early on, but it happens. It's a tricky circuit, and some potentially tricky cars to drive as well, as they are all certainly pushing the limit. Road Atlanta, you know, it's a circuit that will certainly punish you for mistakes. You know, it's not got quite an abundance of runoff. You know, you've got the track and then you've got some grass, and the barriers aren't too far away after that. And you are going at quite high speeds, of course, through the S's as well, and on that run towards 10A and 10B. You're carrying quite a bit of speed, so just to marginally get it wrong is going to send you hurtling towards the barrier at quite some speed. So yeah, Road Atlanta, as good of a track it is, it really does reward itself to consistency. Again, even in a sprint race where you have to be on the limit lap after lap after lap, you have to be on the limit, but also have that shred of consistency. And that's why sprint racing is so good, because not only do you have that tricky element to it, that you know, that mental endurance in a sprint race, you also have action like this where we've got now 5 cars fighting over for position.
Yeah, we certainly do. Heinrich making up a position. I think Attila got past as well. So Salverson dropping down a couple of places already on this lap. And as we come down this back straight through turn 8 and 9, you get a huge, massive run. And I wonder if there's going to be further side-by-side action down towards the braking zone into turn 10A. Looks like Salverson is having a bit of a defensive battle here. He's got Arujos on the outside, getting side-by-side, but not enough into the braking zone. Salverson holds on there for that 6th position as it stands. But this is a huge battle forming for this top sort of 4 or 5 positions, and it looks like the top 3 are starting to get away, so they've got to be careful with their battling to not let those top 3 get away even more. But of course, if you feel like you're faster, then you need to get to the front and try and chase them down.
Absolutely. But also for sort of in the position of Katila to say, you know, the top 3 getting away, you know, at that point you might know that I'm not really fighting for the top 3. The P4 is the best I'm going to get. I'm going to try and anchor down and hold on to this one. And then what you start getting is just these massive trains start to form, because Katila is just holding them up, completely white lining it defensive. And now we're having to see Heinrich go for the move to the left-hand side. It is going to be a tricky run. Has the BMW got it stopped on the outside, and he's managed to swoop his way up into 4th place. So Katila, the pace certainly, unfortunately for him, isn't there enough to hang on to P4. But in doing so, he's actually caused his own demise in trying to anchor down for P4. This is the danger of anchoring down, is because in doing it, he's attracted so many more cars into this fight, and he might actually find himself tumbling down a couple of more places than he would have hoped.
Yeah, certainly might do. We've already had a couple of drivers in the pit lane as well. I wonder if that's for strategy, but we'll get to that in a minute as we're getting a bit of side-by-side towards the braking zone here of turn 10A. There's Rujo's trying to make a bit of a move, and I think he just about did, getting there a position a little bit further ahead, and that, of course, is something that sees Salverson go back another position. So that's 3 places lost just in a couple of laps, and that is not what the number 14 driver there would have wanted, because he's just going further and further back, and in a minute got Lorenz trying to get as well through up to those top positions. And of course, the drivers, as you see there, quite a few drivers making some positions up, just as the chaos that we've seen in the sort of the midfield further down the pack in the first couple of laps.
Got to be there to capitalize on it. Yes, you might be slightly lucky that some people are having some crashes, but hey, you're not the one making those mistakes. You're not the one getting involved in those crashes, and you're the one in those positions to then be able to capitalize on it. So it is a skill in and of itself to just have that patience to wait it out and to spot your opportunities right, and then of course to get that time and then pounce when those opportunities do arise. Especially in sprint racing and endurance racing, and pretty much any discipline as well, it's a good skill to have. But certainly paying off for a number of drivers amongst that midfield, because we always knew it's going to be a war zone. As soon as you get a large pack so bunched up together, even if it's a standing start or rolling start, it really doesn't matter. As soon as you've got a tight mid pack all bunched up together, it's going to be a war zone. Here we now have a fight for P11. To the left hand side goes the Ferrari, that's still an Uve to the inside of the chicane, and yeah, unfortunately for Tricoli in the Mercedes, has to tuck in behind, and honestly there was not really much he could do. It didn't actually look like he put up too much of a fight against him.
Yeah, it certainly didn't, and that gap has already spread out as we come through the final couple of corners as well. And look behind, Nesov there started second last, 27th on the grid, and is already up into that 13th place. Did mention that was one to look out for, but look at that on the grass, the Ferrari there of Tilleneuve going a little bit too wide in turn 1, losing that position back, and also Nesov going through. So Tricoli back up into 11th, Nesov into 12th place, and Tilleneuve there just dropping down. Lucky to continue in the race actually, because if you get stuck too much on the grass there in turn number 1, you just can't turn, of course, and it's quite a sharp, it's really like a 90-degree right-hander, just keeps turning and turning and turning up the hill. And yeah, if you put that front left or even the rear left onto the grass, you just get sent off. So pretty lucky there to still be in a fight, but Nesov will be loving that one up into 12th place as it stands.
For sure, and looking at his pace, his last lap was a 16.8. Our leader, Ole Steinbratton, was a 16.9. So Nezov has got race-leading pace at the moment. His best lap time as well, a 16.6 for Nezov, a 16.5 for Steinbratton. So Nezov is on a charge. It must be said in that Mercedes started towards the back of the grid, as you say, and he's not been waiting around at all. We are about 12.5 minutes into this race, 28 minutes and 20 seconds left to go, approaching half distance. But yeah, Nezov has used that time very, very wisely indeed. And of course, with everyone fighting so well, Cam, it's actually played nicely into the hands of Alexei Nezov, because as soon as he clears one car, straight away he can then see the next fight, and it gives him that motivation, that drive to say, come on, the next one's only a few tenths up the road, we can go for it. And yeah, he certainly is not waiting around at all. We've got a couple of tenths, he's on the back of Tricoli, then it's a bit of a gap to Panagois, but then in front of him, it's a complete train of cars all the way up really to Patrick Heinrich in P4. So yeah, do not count out Nezov in this race whatsoever.
Yeah, certainly not. His only issue is that he's going to have about 4 or 5 seconds ahead of Tricolo once he gets past there. But they are battling a little bit ahead. Rabier just dropped down a position there to 10th place. So certainly some opportunities there for Nesov to get well inside that top 10 over the course of the next 27.5 minutes. Let's see what his Mercedes can do coming down this back straight once again. Bit of Merc on Merc action all the way through turn 9 here as we come down towards that massive braking zone on this track. Is Nesov going to have a think towards the inside? Goes to the inside there in his purple machine and makes up that position. That was nice and easy. And once again, Tricoli not really defending the position, just knowing where he is in the race as Nesov gets closer and closer to the top 10.
Yeah, he's doing a great job, it is Nezov. And honestly, you could just see that Tricoli wasn't fighting him at all. He did not want to put up much of a fight for Nezov. And to be honest, a very, very smart decision, because what is the point? Nezov realistically is always going to find a way through. What are you gaining by holding him up? You're just ruining both your races. Already now we've got one of the BMWs coming into the pit lane. Not entirely sure as to who it is, but we are approaching half distance, Cam. This might be where some people start to think to come in, but surely you would leave it as late as possible to have the shortest fill-up time.
Yeah, but then also if you come in early, you have less to fill up as well if you started with a full tank. So, because you're basically just topping off. So let's certainly see, but maybe this is actually for some damage thing. This is Paul V. Lang coming through turn 5. That is way too wide, completely missing the apex, and maybe having a bit of an issue there with the tyres and managing to lose quite a few places there and nicely getting out of the way of the drivers coming a bit further down. But certainly not something that Paul Lang would want to be seeing, and it looks like back out on track. But yeah, so you're right. The strategy of when you do the stop is very important. But if you do the other way, where you go longer, you also spend more time at a lower fuel level as well. Whereas if you do the top-up method, then you're averagely having a lot more fuel. So in theory, that's slower, but you might be able to get yourself some track position. As we come to this battle, this is 4th place at the moment. Patrick Heinrich in the number 7 car, leading the way. Arujo just behind as well, but also you cannot discount Katilla as well, who seems to be just on the back there. So this is certainly working to be a big battle as well.
For sure, as it has been. We've been following this fight actually for quite a while. Heinrich got in front of Katilla, it was a few laps ago, I believe, and unfortunately hasn't been able to break away. Oh my word, that is very squirmy there of the Mercedes of Salverson. This could allow Yannick Lorenz to have a bit of a look. You can now see they're going to run side by side, the two Mercedes, and Lorenz is going to get himself up in that 7th place because of the completely killed momentum of the blue Mercedes of Salverson, and that is such a shame. Once again, another place loss for the number 14 machine as they head in towards the chicane of 10A and 10B. Lorenz is making some steady progress, and that is the thing, Cam, is in packs like these, biding your time, because you know there's going to be a mistake somewhere. The pressure is ramped up in situations like these. If you can just bide your time and pick them off one by one, you can actually make some pretty steady progress.
Yeah, you can. If you look at this sort of long train that has formed, they're not bumper to bumper, but there's only maybe half a second in between each of these cars for multiple in a row, really sort of P4 down to P10. So yeah, there's quite a lot. 7 cars involved in this little train that is forming, and it's certainly one, as you say, if you pick pick one off one by one, you can work your way a bit further up inside the top 10, and that is certainly something they need to think about, because those top 3 have pulled away by over 4 seconds now, the gap between 3rd and 4th, so that's getting more and more difficult to overcome. And as obviously we get close towards that halfway point in the race, it becomes harder and harder to pull them back. But you can just see there in the foreground the 3 Mercedes leading the way before we see Heinrich there in that BMW trying to get involved, and certainly doing a good job leading the way at the moment.
He is, and unfortunately for them, they can't maintain the pace of the top 3, which still is at a stalemate between Steinbrat and Jesse Jones and Maxine Godino 1, 2, and 3. There is about a second covering our top 3, so it is close. Just unfortunately, as we say, not close enough for them to be going racing. Whether they're playing the patient game and doing the right thing, like we were saying a bit earlier on towards the start of the race, breaking free of that pack of cars behind, because we've already seen how chaotic it can get and how much time you can lose in such a short space of time. All of them 9k I rating for Steinbrat and 7.9 for both Jones and Godino. So they certainly know what they're doing. They know, they're probably definitely well experienced in the world of iRacing, of course, in GT3s as well, you'd be safe to assume. So yeah, they certainly seem to have it all screwed on, on their head, and it is working from 5 seconds now. They are clear. Fingers crossed though it doesn't stay like this for the rest of the race, because between the 3 of them, with how high rated they are and how close they are on pace, it would be great to see them have a good scrap towards the end.
Absolutely, and I do think they're going to do that. It's just one of those things where sometimes you have to play the strategic game and just bide your time and wait until a better point in the race if you think that you can have a battle. And of course, the battling is certainly something that we've seen so far here, as you saw Heinrich there losing a place, but also there Salverson losing another place. Rabia getting a bit closer, but Paniagua getting a position as well. So certainly something to look out for between some of these drivers, as some of the Mercedes here have been dropping down in the way of Salverson. So just showing that it's not all about the car. Potentially in that qualifying session, as you say, some Porsches coming up as well, and good to see the battle between all the different manufacturers, but this one is certainly continuing now as we come downhill.
for sure, and still single file between a number of cars. Here in comes this is the number 15 of Tran, the Mercedes, into the pit lane towards the back end of the field. We have lost a fair share of cars actually. We started with 28, we are now down to 24, so unfortunately 4 cars have already left us, which is certainly a shame, but yeah, well, what is to be expected with such a large grid. There is a car off, yet another Porsche. This is the number 16, this is Mikey Doble. So yeah, it certainly is seeming to be, and he knocks over some cones for good measure as well as he rejoins the circuit. So not getting back into the rhythm of things too quickly. So Road Atlanta claims yet another victim.
I mean, you were saying this a few minutes ago as well. This track bites, as is the case with a lot of the American tracks. They're sort of these more old school tracks, and it really does bite you if you go off. Not a lot of room. Having said that, that is just losing the rear end, to be honest. There's no grass involved in that one, and I thought that was going to be an even bigger crash, but looks like for Mikey, he might be able to get back going with just maybe some hurt tyres rather than, and some pride rather than anything else. As we come back to this battle a little bit further down, Christensen trying to get involved. Good to see some battles happening a bit further down the way. We've got Fritz de Ridder trying to get involved with this battle as well, just behind him. This is for Pete, 17 and 18 in your grid today, so just a little bit further back, but of course we see this all the way in the Friday night prime time. Doesn't matter what position you're in, everyone is fighting for their place.
They are, and you always sort of find someone who is around your own pace level, which is awesome to see. And we have battles up and down the field. Of course, we do prefer the fights for the race D because higher stakes and things like that. But action is action at the end of the day. Cars are going to go side by side, and that's what makes things exciting. So if they can put on a good show, then fair play to them. And again, it is nice, even if you are sort of newer to iRacing and things like that, just to find someone that's, you know, similar to your level. Because even though you're not pushing to go towards the top end of the field, you're pushing to someone who maybe is slightly quicker than you, and then you're rising to their level, and then that's how you improve. So again, just getting into some battles and having a bit of a race is always the best way to go forward. A bit of topsy-turvy between Timanuvi and Tricoli, both of them down to 12th and 13th, so not entirely sure if they've come into the pits cam, but they are certainly a little bit further down than they were a little bit earlier on.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that is coming into the pit lane, just because I don't think that is enough time loss. I wonder if there's been a little bit of just a pace reduction though, because these guys have obviously dropped off a little bit further back from the guys behind. I do think that is just the pace as we see and continue through the race is certainly something that they have to think about with the tyres, although I believe when it comes to the pit stops, it would just be the fuel side of things rather than the tyres. That would be way too much. Oh, right, the background there, that is way too wide for Tricoli, managing just to keep it within the bounds of reason. They're not within the bounds of the racetrack, but within the bounds of at least continuing on in this race. And certainly the tyres will be something to think about a little bit as we get a bit further on into the race.
For sure. Again, it's only 40 minutes. It's not like it's, you know, an 8-hour race or you're trying to double stint your tyres, but you know, compared to the start of the race to where you are at 40 minutes, the tyres are going to wear, especially at a track like Road Atlanta. You're going high speeds. There's a lot of, you know, sharp and long corners as well. So those tyres are being put under a lot of strain. You are going to start to feel the wear, and you can't afford to change them. You just have to tough it out. You have to slug it out all the way to the end, because changing tyres in a series like this is a death wish. You are not getting anywhere if you change tyres in a 40-minute race. So again, it is going to be difficult, especially that, again, it comes down to the setup choice and the cars. How hard do you go, how hard do you push to then have that you know, that harder job a little bit later on in terms of tyres. So while the Porsche and Mercedes might be quicker on pace, are they slightly harder on tyres, and is that then where we're going to see other cars maybe slide into their own a little bit more?
Certainly might do, as the drivers obviously themselves can sort of factor into that. If you spend a lot of time following someone, potentially you might be saving a little bit if you're being conservative, or you might be pushing too much, trying to get on the backside of them. Though here we're seeing Catilla trying to defend, as Paniagua getting a little bit closer. This 7th place, 6th, 7th place, this battle as we go to the outside now of turn number 9. Are we going to see Catilla lose a place here down towards the braking zone? It looks like it certainly is. Porsche there, Paniagua getting up into that position, up towards 6th place, and slowly been working his way up through the top 10. There's Catilla also just moving a further place down as he did a couple of laps ago. So this sort of battle that we're seeing has flip-flopped quite a lot since we started focusing on it about 10 minutes ago.
For sure, and also look down to P11, Alexei Nezov. We were saying when he was behind Dracoli, he's got 4.5-second gap to make up. He's now just over 2 seconds off the back of Loic Rabier for P10, and that's the back of this train. He has been on fire. Him and Rabier on that last lap actually pretty much matched, slightly slower than Rabier, 16.5 for the number 6, 16.7 for the number 8, but both of them are closing in on this fight, and as we said, we were expecting Nezov to close in on this fight, and the more they battle, you know, between for 4th place, the quicker, over 5th place actually, because Aurora has actually managed to breach away a little bit for P4, but behind Patrick Heinrich for P5, Nezov certainly is going to be involved. There he is in that purple Mercedes. You can just see how close he is onto the back of the Porsche of Loic Rabier. And yeah, it's certainly not going to be long at all. But Cam, we only have 15.5 minutes of this race left.
Well, we certainly do. As Heinrich there loses a place as well. Paniagua getting up another place up into 5th. 2 laps in a row in the same corner, and that is certainly looking to be very good. Is the Porsche coming into itself? Because, of course, Araujo, as you say, just getting up into that place quite a few laps ago now, actually. So maybe that is coming the way. But, actually, a little bit further back in the background, that is a bit of side-by-side action in towards turn 1 and 2, but not quite enough, as we're starting to see a few drivers come in. Villeneuve being the first on. 15 minutes to go. We are expecting half an hour or just about on the tank, so we are expecting maybe 3-4 laps before most of the other drivers come in.
It'll be interesting to see how wide the range of the pit window is, how early people come in, how late people can stretch it, or if they are just going to have a pretty unanimous decision and come in all at the same time. That would defeat a lot of the strategy element of this race, or will it actually? Because it could open the door for some people to do some surprises. If everyone's doing one thing, you might actually be better off being an anomaly, anomaly. I'll get my words out eventually, and coming in early or coming in later, because you know full well everyone's coming in on that one lap. You can then have for sure some free track space and then make that time up. So for sure going to be interesting to see how this race unfolds over the next couple of minutes, because right now, Cam, you know, the last what has it been, 25 minutes of racing action have been important, but not quite as important as this one. This really is do or die.
Oh, it certainly is. This next sort of 5 minutes is really going to work out where you're going to end up. A pit stop sequence is always very good, as Nezov there comes in a little bit earlier potentially, and we were mentioning this, how it's going to work it out, and to say one thing against people pitting earlier or later. Obviously, if you stop now, you've also got a bit more fuel in the tank compared to everyone going out as well. So potentially the actual stop time might be fairly similar, but you might be able to get yourself into a bit of clearer traffic maybe, get yourself away from a fight and do something like that. You know, to get yourself in that position. But generally staying out longer, as we mentioned before, does mean you sort of average being at less fuel. So now, once everyone else is pitting, if you're still out on track, if you can just hammer in a couple of fast laps when you're on the lower fuel, then that is also another way to make up places. But of course, it is so close in all of these battles, just a couple of tenths of a second is going to make a big difference. As we see Heinrich here now in this 6th position as it stands. Got Kittel just a little bit behind, actually, as we're starting to see Lorenz try to get involved. So yes, certainly something to look out for, but it looks like they're all coming in actually. Zach, I think this is the moment where everyone is running out of fuel. Look at this.
This is going to be tricky to spot your marks. You've got a very busy pit lane. You've got to come in. You've got to get it stopped. And because again, something as easy as just getting it stopped in your pit box to actually fuel the car up is easier said than done. When the pressure is this high, all of our top 3 are in. Be interesting to see their stop time relative to each other. You would expect that Jesse Jones and Guidino have slightly lower ones versus Steinbratton because they were just stuck in the slipstream for majority of the race so far. But look at how busy this pit lane is. It really is crunch time. You've got to get in, you've got to get out, but also with this high pressure scenario, it could open the door for some mistakes. Have some people maybe underfueled a little bit or overfueled in that sort of that high pressure scenario, and again it will certainly come back to bite them in the backside towards the very last stages of this race.
Yes, I'm just trying to work out the rough variance there that we've seen, and it's a good second and a half between the fastest and the slowest, and a second and a half could be a couple of places as well. So let's try and work out exactly who has made up some positions or not. I think it's roughly in a similar position, but Lorenz there in 12th place. He's lost a few places as well. Nesov has certainly got up, I think, a couple of places by doing this, potentially working himself out to be now inside that top 10 as well, now on the back of Rabier as well. So this is actually working out pretty well. Also, is under 12 seconds to the lead when a bit earlier in the race. I think that was about 13-14 seconds it got to, so it's actually caught the leaders over the course of the race, and now coming down towards turn 10A, 10B, up the inside there, and that was not defended at all. Rabier getting completely out of the way, and now Nesov already on the back of Katila as we have 11 minutes to go. This could be an exciting finish for Alexei Nesov.
Oh, it will be indeed. He's going to be absolutely flying. Of course, he's already done a couple of laps after his pit stop. He's settled back into the rhythm. He's already picked off one place up into P9 on the back now of Yoni Katila, just in front of him. And yeah, Nesov, with that momentum, with the sheer pace that he's had, you would expect he's going to carve his way through. But the gaps have opened themselves up back again, 1.5 seconds between Heinrich and Katila. So it's not easy said and done for Nesov. With the timer ticking down, time is most certainly not on his side. That's the thing we're starting towards the back is as awesome as you look carving your way through the field, if you want to finish well, you have that time constraint working against you, being that ball and chain. But Nesov has handled it to perfection. And unfortunately for him, the pit stop window, naturally, it is always going to space people out just a little bit more. But I think for Nesov, he was hoping everyone was going to stay just a little bit closer than they have.
Yes, certainly those gaps have just come because, as we were mentioning, that sort of extra half second here or there in the pit lane can make a big difference when it comes to on track, because of course these are pretty fast race cars, and the amount of distance that they actually cover in that half second is quite a lot. But now we've got this three-way battle for 8th place, which is what exactly we want to see. But it looks like actually Rabier trying to get back a little bit towards Nesov, so he didn't defend, but Nesov hasn't been able to make a position as far as Derrida there is dropping down, having taken his pit stop finally. But we are on board now, coming through turn 3, then down through the S's section. An awesome part of track 1, my favorite really in the world. Such a flowing section of corners, and the elevation, the undulations really work before you come up to this massively fast left-hander at turn 5. Use all of the curb on the exit and try and get a bit of a run down towards the two right-handers that are so important, Zach, to get a run out onto the back straight.
Two of the most important corners on the circuit is 6 and 7. You have to get the exit here. If you mess up 7, you are completely in a bad situation all the way down towards 10A and 10B. You're not in a good spot at all because you're going to just lose time all the way down. You're not going to, that mistake is just going to be exaggerated. You're not going to have the momentum that those behind you have. Here comes Nesov now looking to the right-hand side of Katila. It will be the outside of the first part of the chicane, but if he's late on the brakes, and you can see there, gets ahead under brakes because Katila just said, yeah, fair enough. You're quicker. You're coming through. I'm not going to fight this one too hard. And there's Nesov up into P7. 1.7 seconds is the gap between him and the 6th place man, Patrick Heinrich, in front. So, yeah, the chase is on for this purple Mercedes.
Certainly is. And what a drive there's been so far. Down in 27th place in qualifying, and now working his way already up 20 positions. Look in the background there, Rabier trying to have a look at Katila, who has just slowly dropped back and back from these top guys. Araujo and Paniagua there in the two Porsches. We were mentioning that a little bit earlier, just moving a bit away. Salverson dropping down. Lorenz dropping down, Katila as well over the course of the race, just losing those few seconds here and there, and not being able to keep it up at the front, which is certainly where you want to be, of course, as we are now into the final 8 minutes of the race. And as it stands at the front, just to remind you, they basically stayed the same way throughout the race so far. They have opened up a bit of a gap, though, as it stands. Steinbraten there leading the way from Jones. They are the number 1 and 2, and even behind them is the number 3 of Godino, and the 3 Mercedes AMGs as well, just pulling away from everyone else, doing a great job so far. Well, they've pretty much stayed in formation throughout the whole of the first half an hour or so of this race. And then down in that 4th place, Araujo there working his way up in the Porsche, started a bit further down, but has been able to get through those places in the mid part of the top 10, as well as Paniagua in that 5th place, before Heinrich, Nesov, Katila, Rabier and Lorenz round out the top 10, who we've all been mentioning in this big battle for the final places.
For sure. And once again, side by side, the Mercedes looking to right-hand side of turn 12. Also a little bit just in behind them as well. The Mercedes has got the run to the inside, but that BMW, you can see, has used that outside swing of turn 12 and is going to try it through T1. Bit of argy-bargy between the pair of them, and that Mercedes just is able to carve his way up in front. But interesting between our top 2, it has been formation for the entirety of this race up until now. But, you know, at this point, this is where the pressure racks up, because for Steinbrenner, he's done a great job up until now to have Jesse Jones in your rearview mirror for the last, what has it been, 34 minutes of racing action, get through the pit stops and still remain in front. That is a ton of pressure, but now it's going to probably be tenfold, because Jones is going to be gunning for it. Right now, Jones can go for a move, and you can see, actually, we'll come back to that in just a moment, because Katila is under a bit of pressure, trying to stay in front and retain in that 8th place from Loic Rabier, who is going to come through, get the underline over. Oh, bit of a tag, and wow, fair enough there from Katila. But going back to my point, just before we were interrupted by that BMW going completely sideways, now Jones can go for moves and, you know, not be too scared of anything going on behind them. But you can just see Katila is not having a fun time in these late stages.
I do wonder if there was a bit of contact or not. We couldn't quite see it because of the concrete wall, but something potentially has happened, because Katila is not enjoying it, although potentially not having the best tyres after that. Let's see, side by side through into this final kick. No, just onto the grass himself, and managing to save it pretty well, actually, because that is a huge crash there on the outside. Ironically, it's one of the sort of closest sections of the track is that wall at the final corner, and then also just going way too fast there into turn 1. But once again, keeping it out of the barrier. That is certainly squeaky bum time, but keeping it within the track limits just about in the end, and trying to obviously continue on in this race, but just dropping down quite a lot as we go in towards the final 5 minutes now, and trying to have a bit of a battle as well is Alexei Nesov here, trying to get up another position. This is going to be on Patrick Heinrich there, 6th place this will be for Nesov if he can get a bit of a run. Coming up towards turn 1, not quite enough just yet.
Still, unfortunately, but yeah, you can see Nesov has done wonders in that number 8 machine. He has carved his way through, and you would expect is going to pick off. You have to say that P6 is his ceiling for this race, unless Paniagua makes a drastic mistake, or Araujo as well makes a bit of a mistake. And you have to say that P6 is going to be his limit. But even then, what would it be, 21 places gained over the course of a 40-minute race, one every 2 minutes, nearly one every 2 laps. That is unfathomable pace, and Nesov certainly can be proud of his performance today. We'll have to wait and see if he's going to get this move done on this particular lap. He can sort of take a chill pill just at a moment, because he's still got 4 minutes to get one more place, because he knows that P5 and P4 is a bit too far away, but he's not going to be waiting around at all. There goes Nesov, and no one's really putting up a fight for him. They obviously know that Nesov is just way too quick and is always going to find a way through. So I think Heinrich is more scared of Loic Rabier catching up than anything.
I would think so. That is probably the correct way of looking at it. And once again, Nesov, even with these overtakes, is now 11 seconds back. So even gaining a little bit over the course of the last few laps, whilst just making those places and just doing his thing, as we saw a bit of a move a little bit further back. Katila and Salverson having a battle now for 10th and 11th place. These two have dropped down so much. They were batting, I think, for about 6th place at one point between these two drivers. But now, as it stands, number 10, number 14 machines, the BMW and the Mercedes there, trying to have a bit of a battle. We're into the final 3 minutes now, coming through turn 5, and Katila trying to now hold on to that position after obviously having that mistake earlier on, going back behind, making the position up, and now just needs to hold on with a few laps to go. Short lap around here, of course, and the laps do fly by, so just a couple left before we get to the checkered flag.
Yeah, not long ago at all, and of course with that comes the burden that is your opportunities are also running out. We've seen over the course of this race many people staying single file for the majority of the lap. This is where it is going to count. This run through T8 and 9 down towards turns 10A and 10B, this final chicane where we are going to see the vast majority of that last lap action. We have had our fair share of it before in a variety of series and disciplines. We've had cars on their roofs on the final lap before, and certainly a lot of contact as the stakes just rise up completely on that final lap here at Road Atlanta, because again, there's not really many places to get those moves done. You have to be pretty much single file for the entirety of the first half of the lap. So yeah, complete pressure ramp up. This is the fight we have though for the race between Odo Steinbratton and Jesse Jones. The gap has pretty much remained the same between all of them. We also have Maxime Godino. They're not, a bit of a dark horse really, there to pick up the pieces if anything does go wrong. But what is interesting though, Cam, is they have got a bit of a lapped car situation. I'm not entirely sure what the blue flag rules are in this particular series. I'm not sure if that Porsche has to dart out of the way, but if it goes even slightly wrong for Steinbratton, even a couple of tenths loss could be detrimental.
Oh, it certainly can, and this is a very close battle. As you say, we haven't mentioned them on the stream so much, but Steinbratton has done such a good job to hold on and is starting to pull away now a little bit. Jesse Jones hasn't quite been able to hold on. A minute to go as we go across the line, so this may well be the final lap of the race, and that is of course the all-important one here for Steinbratton. Led the race pretty much from start to finish, didn't really have to worry too much. They got a great run from that pace car as well. Was a little bit further back. Sebastian gets past Crisp there to get up inside the top 15, or they actually swap back once again, so having a bit of a battle further down. But certainly Steinbratton, he's led the race and would certainly be a deserving winner, Zach.
Oh, no questions asked with that one for Steinbratton. Well, we haven't spoken about them much on stream at all, and that probably is a perfect race for you. If you don't get spoken about and you win the race, you've probably had a pretty easy job. I mean, it certainly hasn't been. He's been hammered by Jesse Jones in behind, but unfortunately for the number 2 machine, that Mercedes that has played second fiddle to Steinbratton for this entire race, it just hasn't been quite enough and hasn't been able to rise to the level of Steinbratton. So only a couple more corners left to go. He's going to take it nice and easy, I'm sure, because to throw it away now would be heartbreaking. But 2 more corners left in this race, and while Steinbratton from pole to the win, it's going to be a good one.
It certainly is, and he's going to enjoy that one. Jesse Jones coming in second place, but it is Steinbratton to take the victory here in the sprint series, and he certainly would have enjoyed that one, having a nice battle, but really a battle of the timesheets, not on the track as it stands. Jesse Jones, as we say, getting second place, and Maxime Godino getting inside that top 3. So it is Mercedes 1, 2 and 3, followed by 2 Porsches of Arajo and Paniagua, and it just shows how all of these drivers sort of differed throughout that 40-minute race, showing that consistency is certainly what you need. Side by side though, up across the hill, over across the line, but not quite enough there, as that Porsche, I think, just maybe potentially ran out of fuel, coasting towards the line. And loads of action here at Road Atlanta. A little bit of carnage there on the first lap, but also maybe side by side towards the line, but not quite enough. So quite a few close finishes here. Actually, that I think is Paul Lang trying to work his way up after having a bit of an early pit stop as well. But Road Atlanta certainly bringing us some nice action, Zach.
Well, for sure, certainly not disappointed. And once again, another week of Friday Night Primetime and another banger in terms of racing. Don't forget to go and vote as well on the RaceSpotTV Discord to get involved and have your say in where we go each Friday evening. But yeah, well, at least after 31 laps here today, Cam, this is how the top 10 rack up. And well, each and every one of them deserve to be where they are.
Absolutely, and as you see there, Alexei Nesov heading up inside the top 6, so 21 places. That is certainly an MVP award in my books. And Heinrich there in 7th place, Rabia in 8th, Lorenz and Catilla rounding out the top 10, all giving us some great battles. But as you see in the end, the gap sort of spread out a little bit. We did see that 7-car train a little bit early on for Salvesen. Tillernerva and Tricoli also just dropping down a bit. Stephen Michaels there in 14th place, Matthew Crisp in 15th, Sebastian Tran, Vern and Gregorian in 19th place before Paul Lang there. After that, a bit of a spin early on inside the top 20. Christensen, Derrida there, Double, who we saw having a bit of a spin. Stoltz in 24th place, and then the other drivers having all DNFs, Kuti, Barlow, Costa and Nascimento as well, with Paniagua getting the fastest lap there with a 16.4 on the 24th lap of action. 31 laps all done today, and that pretty much concludes the Friday night primetime. But that is for this week. Next week we have week 4, and if you get yourself on the RaceSpotTV Discord, you can get yourself involved in voting what we will be showing here on the Friday night primetime. We have obviously those 4 options there. We've got the GT4s, the Skip Barbers, the Cup Series, or the Off-Road Series as well. Take your pick, have a choose of what you want, and next week we will be racing it and showing it your way. But from here, from Road Atlanta, this has been week 3. Myself, Cameron Rogers, Zach Sweeney alongside me in the commentary booth, and Zach Johnson doing the cameras behind the scenes. We thank you very much for watching and hope to see you next week. Goodbye.